Okay, let's see. Pull up my agenda here. I'm like, let's get started, and then I'm not ready. Okay, so I would like to call this meeting of the Housing Desegregation Subcommittee meeting to order, and I'm going to read our COVID-19 statement. The Commission on Equitable Housing and Development meeting or subcommittee, the subcommittee, the Housing Desegregation Subcommittee of the Commission on Equitable Housing and Development meeting has now commenced. Sorry about that, it was a little crazy. It is now May 4th at 2:07 p.m. This meeting is being held virtually due to COVID-19 to allow for social distancing and protect the public health. As we continue our efforts in meeting remotely, we ask all commissioners and guests to mute yourselves until called upon to speak to avoid feedback and background noise. For those who have dialed in using the call-in number, to unmute to speak, dial *6 on your phone. Also, prior to speaking, please announce who you are to identify yourself. As a reminder, this meeting is being recorded. We ask that you only use the chat function to request to speak or to announce that you are leaving the meeting so that we can track quorum. Also, in order to comply with the state open meeting law, attendance and votes will be done by way of roll call using audio, not by using the chat function. So with that, I will do a roll call. Lori Meserva?
Present.
Vicky Casino?
Here.
I think that's everybody since Mike is attending as a member of the public today. I think we are the subcommittee. So if you guys have reviewed the agenda, we basically have, I think, the same agenda that we had for last meeting, which I think is still somewhat relevant to what we need to do. So I'm going to just go through this, and if some other, we'll go through the agenda. So the item number 2 is the ASU Housing Equity Study. I know that we've talked about this quite a bit, but I think what this brings up for me, and I'd love to get y'all's feedback about this, is the fact that it's May, and I know that, you know, when I was away for one of the meetings, you guys brought forth the whatever it was we wanted to bring before the commission, and I don't feel like anything has really happened. So, you know, I think what this brings up for me is just kind of like, what are we doing here? Just generally speaking, which I think is something that has come up pretty regularly. You know, I think the equity study lays the groundwork for kind of where we can go. And I really want to try and focus on, instead of being frustrated, really trying to think together what it is that we actually need to do. One is a subcommittee, and then kind of as the full commission in terms of, you know, our particular subcommittee and where we want to go. So I don't know if you guys have thoughts on the study itself, or kind of the bigger picture about, you know, what from here we do as a subcommittee and how we influence the commission going forward.
So did we get all the final results of the study? That was what we discussed a couple months ago.
Yeah.
And so your question is, we've got those, we've shared those with the commission. What do we do with the results of the study?
Well, yes, and I just feel like we got this good foundational study to kind of help us springboard forward, and it's getting no traction at all. And I don't know if there's something else that we need to do, or if we don't think it's that important, or what.
I definitely think it's important. I appreciate your commitment to not focusing on the negative, Jay, but I'm not really sure what we do or what else we could do. We've asked, we've brought things forward. We've said we're frustrated. So I don't know if you have some better suggestions from your place of positivity.
You guys will have to help keep me on the positive track. That train can go off the tracks pretty quick for me. So anyway, Mike, I see your hand raised, or Vicky, if you want to jump in, just go ahead. Don't need to raise your hands. You can just talk.
Oh, okay. I did not want to usurp the commission members.
Yeah. Thanks, Mike.
I got some thoughts on it. So in regards to this subcommittee, I'm just asking the question because I don't know. We had the 3 subcommittees created for the commission. There must have been a reason for the 3. There must be a reason for this one. And probably because I don't have my notes in front of me, just to clarify why this subcommittee exists. Now, having said that, I don't really want to get deep into that. My other thought was this, because I'm kind of participating in it and I'm having regular conversations with various people about equity. And desegregation and segregation comes up a lot. And it's more related to the new, I'm calling it new, the new Office of Equity with the City of Tucson. Mm-hmm. And I guess I should say fairly that I've been chosen as a departmental equity coordinator. Now, basically what that means, I mean, there's more to it, but basically what that means is I represent a certain type of employee for the city. Now, this office, just so, I try to make sure it's understood, this Office of Equity not only is interested in equity related to government, City of Tucson employees, but also the citizens of Tucson. So it's got, there are 2 parts to it. So my suggestion is, or thoughts are, could that department assist this subcommittee with thoughts about actions, activities, next steps, all that stuff that this subcommittee has talked about in the past? What do you think?
Vicky, Laura?
Yeah, I think, Mike, you bring up a good suggestion, and I think we broached that. It seems like a logical connection, right? But we've also asked for more time, and we've gotten still very little time from that office. And now I understand the equity officer is going to have a baby soon. And so, I'm really at a loss for how we engage folks. We've asked, we brought it up at the full commission, we brought it up here, and we get, we got about 15 minutes of her time really super quickly. And I'm not minimizing how busy she is or how big her job is or any of those things, but I feel a little bit of a lack of buy-in. So I think it's a great idea, Mike, and I would love to be able to see us have that happen. I'm not sure what we say differently than what we've already said, which is we want some support from that office.
I had a couple comments. I think that office is still figuring out what they're doing and how to do it. I will say, though, I know I'm usually the one to be complaining about stuff. I think I mentioned when she met with us, they were really focusing on, calling everything DEI. And I believe during that meeting emphasized that, accessibility should be a part of it. And even though you can't have DEI, truly without incorporating accessibility, I feel like it gets lost, blah, blah, blah. She did follow up with me to meet, and they're starting a DEIA professional network, and I participated in the first meeting. I was pleasantly surprised that when the notice went out that it had the A and talked about accessibility. So it's like a minor thing, I guess, but I felt slightly heard, and they kept talking about it through the meeting. But yeah, you're right, Lori. She's gone on maternity leave like in a month, I think, or within the month. And I just don't know how much support they can give to us. I almost feel like we can advise them on things at this point. I don't know. I'm pretty frustrated with the whole commission, and quite honestly, I know we're being recorded, but I am not looking forward to this whole afternoon, because we have like hours of the same thing, and I know I committed to it, but I don't know if we can. I think I'd probably be happy if we could just figure out, you know, like our action steps, things that we can do in our own little subcommittee. And I know, like, we presented things, you know, a couple ideas to the commission, but didn't really get a yay or nay. I feel like that's still fuzzy, you know, like the meetings. I don't know. I just wonder if we could pick one thing and just try to get a yay or nay and push through on that, so that I think we could all use a little celebration of some success. Even if it's small, you know, like celebrating those small successes helps keep people motivated. And I think that the other committees seem to be struggling. Like, we have one subcommittee that doesn't even have a chair, and they can't secure a chair. So it's probably time to revisit, do we need all three subcommittees? But I think that this subcommittee has probably been the most active and consistent.
Yeah, I agree. And I would say, you know, obviously, Mike, I think that any assistance and engagement would be good. I think it's just what I'm interpreting is just a little bit of skepticism about just kind of how much can be done. But I don't think that means, or I don't think anybody's saying that we shouldn't engage. So I think it's probably a yes. And I just go back to, I mean, what I think we're really lacking, and I don't know how much, just like the three of us that are, you know, officially on this subcommittee at this point, you know, I don't know how much that we can actually do. And what I just think we still really lack, and why I'm frustrated about the equity study just kind of like landing like a lead balloon in a lot of ways, is like, I just really don't think that we have a vision of what an equitable Tucson looks like. Like, what, you know, what's the vision for equitable housing? And I threw a couple of links in the chat. One is to this policy link thing that they've got going about, I think, really what a vision for equitable housing looks like. And I think that, you know, Mike, to your question about why we have this subcommittee, one, we all voted on the subcommittee, so we all thought it was important. So, I mean, that's kind of goes without saying, but I think that why it's important to me and why I think this subcommittee is so important is because I think so much of the housing inequities that Tucson and other cities experience goes back to housing discrimination and housing segregation. And, you know, the communities that and groups that suffer the most because of our current housing policy, you know, are, you know, single mothers with children, communities of color, persons with disabilities, right? And so much of that just is rooted in, you know, housing policy that the Fair Housing Act and other ADA and, you know, other laws we're supposed to dismantle, but we still are living with that legacy. And I just feel like, you know, and again, I think it's a really hard thing for the three of us to do, but, you know, what is our vision for essentially a desegregated Tucson, and how does that happen? And how do, you know, another thing I was thinking about that is totally lacking from all of the work that we're doing is, you know, like we've talked about, there are no community voices, right? So like, you know, if the community is engaged on this topic, what is the community's vision for a Tucson that, you know, has opportunity for all, regardless of where you live? So, you know, I just still go back to the goals and kind of vision that we have, you know, for our subcommittee, but for the commission as a whole. And you know, I don't know if we're just not like getting our point across in the way that people can grasp on the full commission. But I just feel like, we worked on this equity study with the ASU students. We presented, something that's got some, ideas about from other places that are, looking at housing equity on a deeper level. And it just has not been, picked up by the full commission, which also takes me to the thing that I just think is so critically important that also doesn't seem to get traction which is part of the equity study, which is what's our baseline and how are we measuring progress moving forward, right? I mean, I feel like a broken record saying this, and I'm just like, is it just not relevant or do people not get it? But I just don't feel like it gets any traction. So I don't know. I mean, I don't know who said it, but maybe, like what is the main thing that what is the main thing that we want to focus on maybe in this subcommittee? I mean, maybe that's a good question. So anyway, I've been talking a lot. I don't know if any of that lands for y'all or kind of what next.
Yeah, if I may, in regards to the Office of Equity, here's my take on it. From maybe from the inside, really. So I guess they've been functional for over a year. I feel like they needed that year, even if it's as bad as it sounds. It just doesn't sound right the way I want to phrase it, but it's taking them that year to get going. Really, I mean, to pull it together, and so okay, a year to get it together. And if I may, I kind of feel that way, like with us, like with the commission, like our first year, I was learning terms and all that kind of stuff. The woman who runs it, Larice, she has begun, I believe, her leave already. I believe it began last week, so she's out of the office. There has been some change up in that office, additional change up in that office as well, because the woman working below her, Maniko, I believe is how you pronounce her first name, she found a different position elsewhere and has left. And someone from the city has replaced her. So, there's a new second in command. It's a guy. I don't remember what department he came from and everything. I met him. Seems like a nice guy, but, we'll see. But he's probably got everything on his shoulders for now. If it helps to know, us departmental equity coordinators, we meet at least once a month, or at least trying to, if that helps to me know. And to be blunt and honest, we're kind of getting up and running too. So it's been a few months, just so you all know. But I'm grateful to you all that you would consider networking with that office. I think it's a good idea, and I just hope it works out.
And Mike, I don't think you were. Maybe you were, maybe you weren't. I don't remember. But Larice did come and meet with us, like somebody mentioned. I guess it was at our last meeting, I think. And we definitely asked that they continue to meet with us, and that we would support them and whatnot. So I think that that groundwork has been laid, at least for our subcommittee as well. So I think it'd be relatively easy to continue to build on that.
So I don't know, this might be a bad idea, but what if I'm just trying to think of things that we could like start and finish that would yield something. And Jay, you said something that sparked an idea when you're talking about like, what's the community's vision? I wonder, I was thinking about like collaborating with that department, and, it could be that department and our commission or our subcommittee, and hosting some town hall meetings to, because it's an opportunity to share some information, but also to have like a facilitated discussion, almost like some focus groups.
Yeah.
And so I don't know. It's kind of a PR-ish thing, but it is an opportunity to actually hear from people living in the community and to connect with people with lived experience.
Yeah. That's a great idea, Vicki. And the other thing that comes to my mind, I think that I don't think has been very explicit that, maybe we need to be explicit about is like, I think there are two things happening as well, right? It's like, I do really think that HCD is doing the best job it can, and with the resources it has, it's, improving things, right? but I just really wonder if a lot of the things that we talk about, like, you know, measuring equity and all of that stuff, really comes down to a capacity issue that nobody's really willing to say, right? It's like, I know that the HCD folks are stretched really thin. So I just wonder if, you know, there needs to be a more open discussion about, you know, what can HCD actually do? Because, right, I mean, it's like, if we're going to do town halls or something like that, I mean, we're not going to organize that. I mean, we're just is not, you know, we're volunteers on a commission. So, you know, people from the city would be doing that. And, you know, are those types of things possible? And if they're not, like, let's get that on the table first. If HCD staff doesn't have the capacity or the desire to, you know, establish a baseline of equity and measure it going forward, then let's just go ahead and say that, so that we're not, you know, continually being like, let's do these things, and then it's just not possible.
Yeah, maybe that's what the discussion is. And I think, or it's like, oh, you know, if holding a town hall or doing something else, people think it's a good idea, but, you know, we obviously need lots of staff support, and they don't have the capacity this year, but could say, hey, that's something that we could target for next year. Or just, I think it would just be so helpful to have some type of plan.
Yeah.
and like, I don't know, some type of measurable objective. I'm at the point now where it doesn't even have to be a SMART goal. I just want to be able to cross something off the list. Yeah. So we can say, hey, here's something like tangible. We accomplished it.
Yeah. I was going to say something, but I forgot.
Well, I'll pick it up so you can, you know, pull your thought together. If I may, and this is my opinion and view based on my interaction with various departments and personnel with the city. I know what you said, you know, HCD short staff. I believe, based on what I think I know, the entire city is short staff. It's not just HCD. Sure. It's bad. And I feel I know what the solution is, but still, I don't know all the details. I don't know enough. I hear conversations where there seems to be enough money. And so in the back of my mind is, well, why aren't we spending the money to get, but the city doesn't. I don't know enough to know why that's not happening. You know, maybe I'm wrong about the money, but some of the things over here makes it sound like, well, there's money. So let's hire people.
Well, and the other thing that, you know, could be a possibility as well is, you know, if we can get a decent enough vision together of what it is we want to accomplish, if the capacity is not there, you know, maybe there's an opportunity to go after some funding, or, you know, find other opportunities to bolster the city's capacity to do these things. I mean, you know, obviously writing a grant of any substance or size takes capacity in and of itself, but you know, maybe that's an option as well. I'm just thinking out loud here.
I don't remember the exact words Jim used last commission meeting, but do you all recall him when folks were kind of thinking about, I don't know, events or activities? He said, you know, our role is to advise the mayor and council, and their role is to do, you know, to make the things happen. And that really stuck with me. I mean, I think what he was saying is, like, we're supposed to advise them, and then they're going to do with it, you know, what they want to do with it. We weren't, and I'm not discouraging us from suggesting things. I think we should, but I do think that was a really poignant message that I took away from after being on this commission for 3 years, which was like, oh, okay, they don't really want us doing things. They want us talking and telling mayor and council, like, what our suggestions are. So I don't know if I captured that correctly.
Well, that's what we did with the affordable housing recommendations, right? I mean, we put a list of recommendations together to mayor and council, and as far as I know, I don't think we've ever heard anything back from them aside from they got it, but, like, I don't, you know, so go ahead, Vicki.
Well, that's a good point. And so it's all of us who are interested in social justice want to do more and maybe are thinking outside the scope of what we're charged to do. But then it brings me to maybe I'm not a good commission person because the way things are now is very frustrating and I feel like is not a good use of my time. Because, you know, I'm stretched too. We all have work at our own jobs. And I was just going to pull up, I feel like I need to read the bylaws again. I pull them up all the time and I feel like maybe I just don't digest them. But given what Lori said, now I want to read them again.
What do you mean you don't digest bylaws
Yeah.
very well? I've never in my life digested bylaws very well.
No, and I know.
So
And Vicki, for what it's worth,
get...
I find myself referring to notes and the bylaws and all the time. It's not just you. I have to try to refocus.
Yeah. And I think that goes back to kind of what, you know, again, it's big picture. It's like, well, what's our vision of an equitable city? I just really don't feel like that we have that. I mean, I think as a desegregation subcommittee, I could probably articulate something for us that I think all kind of would be on board with, right? It's like, you know, we want people to be able to live where they want to live and have access to the opportunities that they need to thrive, whether that's, you know, on the north side, south side, east side, or west side. But I think that, you know, part of the other piece of that is, you know, dismantling the structural barriers that are preventing that from happening, because clearly it's not happened yet. So, you know, that to me, and again, it goes back to like the vision of what we're doing. I don't think that there's a clear articulation of that vision for the city. And I think that without that, it makes it hard to do much about it.
I probably wasn't looking at the most recent document. In fact, I know I wasn't because I had draft on it, but I was, let me see what it was. It was about the purpose and goals. I'm trying to find the most recent and the bylaws, but anyway, in that draft document, maybe it's changed. It does, most of the bullet items are about providing recommendations, but then there's also some things on educating and researching. And so I think some things that we've wanted to do fit within that. And how do you provide good recommendations if you don't have, you know, the information you need to make informed decisions about the recommendations.
Right. I would suggest that we don't just go round and round and round, that we pursue the equity study. And really, you know, we put the students put effort into that, you put effort into that connection. It didn't land, and I say we bring it back up rather than digging a new thing up. I mean, I don't think we give up on it. And I think, you know, the conversation around the equity study is, to your point, do we have a shared idea of what equitable housing in Tucson really is, or what equity in Tucson looks like? And I think we just keep working at that one, because to Vicki's point, I'd also like to check something off a list, and I'm running out of steam, and I don't know if we can like start another whole new project. I mean, I think it's a good idea about the town halls and a suggestion to bring up, but, you know, I think that's a really large project the city would have to agree to spearhead. So that may not be something that happens right away, but the equity study could be if we push that as a committee.
Two things. Can you remind me what we're asking, the specific thing we're asking about the equity study, or is it to have that discussion you just described? And I think even to have that discussion, I think it can't just be part of a subcommittee report, because what I see happening is we report and then it's like, okay, and then we move on to the agenda. I think if we want that discussion, you have to request it as a specific agenda item. I'm not sure. I'm still trying to figure out how this works, but it seems like it's not going to happen just coming out of a subcommittee report.
I think that's accurate, Vicki, but I mean, I would just remind us that, you know, when we got the equity study, it was on the agenda and it was discussed. It just, nothing ever came of it. So I don't know, maybe you're right. And just, we need to like ask for it to be a specific agenda item again with some like actual action items. I don't know how to do that exactly, but I definitely feel like you said, it's like we do our little report and then it's like, well, okay, that's all. It's like, for what? So, but I also like, Lori, I like your idea of centering what we're kind of doing going forward around the equity study, because it really does allow us to, I think, move in a number of different directions that we've talked about, right? Which is, you know, what is our vision of an equitable, Tucson with equitable housing? What does measuring look like? Can we do it? Because the study, you know, highlights some cities that have, you know, done some measuring in different ways and are at different points. So, you know, focusing on that equity study, I think could really kind of give a center of gravity maybe to what we keep going back to, right? It's like we keep going back to the equity study for the different things that we want to accomplish. Does that make sense? Is that kind of what you were saying, Lori? Is that kind of hear that right? So I know we did this a couple months ago, but to kind of head off what happens when, you know, we do our report out, is there something specific that we want to articulate to the full commission when we do the report out? I mean, so there's the report out, and then I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think a lot of the meeting today is about, at the full commission, is about what we're doing as a full commission, right?
That's a yes, Jay.
Okay. So anyway, back to my question. Do we want to bring something specific to the full commission regarding the equity study? Like, what is it that what are we articulating?
A little off subject. Lori, I'm looking at the agenda for 4 o'clock and it's got your name on the subcommittee.
That was my error, Mike.
Oh, okay.
It should be Jay, not Lori.
Okay.
And I'm always happy, Lori, if you want to do the report out, I'm more than happy for you to do it at any point.
Quick, get ready.
I'm not jumping at the bed.
So I didn't make a mistake then.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right.
Thank you.
No, but in all seriousness, if I'm happy to not be the person talking, if anybody ever wants to jump in and do that, but I will do it. Yeah, we've got a whole, if I'm reading this correct, number 4 on our full commission agenda is discussion of commission goals and priorities. And then that's number 4 on the agenda. And then number 7 are the subcommittee updates. So, you know, I think we need to be assertive about, you know, the discussion of goals and priorities. And I can certainly, you know, articulate some of those things that we've been talking about, but, you know, as others kind of have more to lend there, that would be good. But again, back to what we might want to request or put forward or to the full commission. It sounds like we're kind of landing on the equity study as being our center of gravity for some of the things we want to move forward. So what exactly is it that we are taking to the full commission regarding the equity study that we want? I mean, again, just thinking out loud here off the top of my head, we would like for the equity study to be on the agenda every meeting, and that we are figuring out how to do something similar in Tucson, like measure equity and I don't know. Again, I'm just thinking out loud here to try and get us started. What do y'all think?
I'm trying to remember the name of the woman who's working with the Office of Equity. She moved from one department to another. She handles data.
Oh, was it Laura Sharp? Wasn't she?
That's her. I was going to say Laura, but I was like, no, it can't be Laura because Laura Mazzurro's here. But no, it is her. Yeah. I think she's got a truckload of information and data that if we kind of poke through a little bit, maybe we could get an idea of some kind of concrete, well, maybe not concrete, but some kind of changes we could be trying to head towards, recommend, or frame for conversation or something.
Yeah.
Because, and I haven't had time, I mean, I would love to have the time just to go through the history of because what's in the news right now, and I think it's because it makes good news, are the deeds, the where it has the yeah. So that's that's in the news. That's the latest thing in everybody's face. But what else is there that they got that would be beneficial to the subcommittee?
Well, and I think to your point, Mike, I would say, I think that you're right on. I think that there's a lot of data that the city either already has and has actually put into different reports and stuff, like the poverty and urban stress report that's got some of that kind of data. We looked at, Laura has met with us and walked us through a mapping project, and it's escaping me what the specifics were, but Vicki, you talked to her about making the map accessible. I don't know if you remember, but anyway, I mean, I think that a lot of the data is there, and I think it really, to me, Mike, goes back to, well, what's the vision? What do we need the data to do for us, right? It's like, because data on its own without analysis and kind of an idea of what it is we're trying to understand, it can be a little vague. But I think you're right on. I mean, I think that getting that data and putting it together in a way that shows where we are now and that can tell the story over time is really important. And I think that's kind of what the equity study that we're talking about tries to do, or at least show some examples of how other cities have used data that's available to kind of tell this story over time. Right. So back to the question of kind of what it is we're taking back to the full commission. Like, what are we telling them? What about the equity study and how that's working? Go ahead, Vicki.
Well, I think that's what I've struggled with. What exactly, what is the concrete thing we're asking for? And I can't quite wrap my head around it. The only thing I really heard was to have that ground us in a discussion about what does equity look like, which, I mean, I think that could be a first step, because I don't know that the commission has ever had that discussion, or it was before me. Just an aside, so I've been trying to look for things. I can't find a finalized version of the bylaws on the website. What I see posted, it still says draft. And this, I'm sorry, this is a little off topic, but I was reading the Declaration of Policy, and it talks in the first line about, Tucson envisioning a home for everyone. And it just reminds me of, we've talked a few times about getting more involvement from people with lived experience. I don't know how we do it, but I think I'd really like to push for that. And like that language, language is powerful, and talking about, a home for everyone is plain language. And I think resonates because people can imagine it. I think we get caught up in some of the lingo. I mean,
right.
In equity study, we keep drilling that home, and I'm not saying not to do it, but I think that the people who are directly impacted kind of get lost in all of this. And I just wonder if we could figure out how to frame things to keep that focus on, people who are directly impacted, that maybe it would help to, motivate people and keep people engaged and want to do more than just be in a meeting.
Yeah.
I don't have the answer to how to do that, but I do think figuring out how to frame the issue, and I'd love to see it, grounded in people directly impacted.
Yeah. What document were you looking at, Vicki?
I went to the commission's website and just did a search on, well, not even bylaws. I put BYL, and the only thing that came up was, let's see, what date was this? March 3rd, 2022 draft CEHD bylaws.
Yeah, bylaws.
I mean, I could share my screen. Are you on the website or?
Yeah. I'm on the website.
Yeah, so I just did a, control F. Because I didn't see the bylaws posted at the top. I see information on the subcommittees at the very top.
Also, did you see Neto's chat? He said, I don't recall the commission has voted on the bylaws. So.
Oh, that's why they're still draft.
Can I, so
Yeah,
if I can jump, let me
Yeah.
jump in. I'll have to go into my email history, but I did send out to Jim revised bylaws at least a couple of months ago, if not longer.
Right.
And that's where it last sat.
Right.
Oh, well, so I guess this would be a great time, though, since we haven't voted on them, to see if we still agree with everything that's in the draft. Or Neto, you're saying that what you sent to Jim is different from what's posted?
Correct. There's some revisions were made. Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay.
And I do not see it in my history. I'll ask Jim.
I think so if that still has, I think it'd be great if there are more revisions, if everybody could get a copy.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I'll hunt.
Yeah, I didn't realize we didn't approve them.
Hey, Jay, I know you're trying to get to what are you going to report out to the commission this afternoon. I know that's where you want to get to. But I was thinking, hopefully not take us off too far in the conversation. We talk about desegregation, reporting out as the desegregation subcommittee, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
It's a large question. I'm not trying to get an answer. I'm just saying to form some thoughts. What is desegregation, or more specifically, what is desegregation related to Tucson? Now, having said that out loud, my mind goes to the next one, which is, how do we get to desegregation? What do we need to be desegregated? Does that make sense to anybody?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, and I think that also goes to something I raised previously about revisiting shared language, because as I understand it, I wasn't with the commission, but it's a good document, but it was more of a presentation and then accepted as shared language, but there wasn't a lot of discussion around it. And I know when I read through it, I had lots of questions, and there are different definitions. And I just think the commission, if we're going to have shared language, it should be something that we discuss and actually agree on and say is shared. And so, like, to your point, like what are we talking about when we're talking about desegregation? Because I bet if you ask 10 people, you'll get 10 different definitions.
For sure. And, I'm just, I am going to, I think you'll get this when I do this, but anyway, I'm going to move to agenda item number 3, which is City of Tucson Office of Equity updates. There's nobody here from the city to do that. So I'm going to move to number 4, which is the Prosperity Initiative. And the reason I'm doing that is because I think it fits perfectly with what we're talking about in terms of a framework and what are we talking about. And Keith Bentley, who is working with Bonnie Bazada on this initiative, which I think is outstanding in terms of a framework for equity for policies moving forward. One of the things that I know that Keith has heard in doing this work is the idea that when you talk about desegregation, or when one talks about desegregation, the idea is kind of like basically breaking up neighborhoods of color, for lack of a better way to put that. And I think that there's been some pushback on that, which I totally understand. So I think for me, when we're talking about desegregation, is we are talking about taking down barriers that prevent people from moving to where they want to live to access the opportunities that they feel like they need. And if that means, staying in a neighborhood that is, predominantly a neighborhood of color, that's great. But I think the problem has always been that those neighborhoods are historically under-resourced and still in many ways are. So on the one hand, I think it is providing the development necessary for neighborhoods that have been historically under-resourced, and also breaking down barriers for people who want to move to other places, whether that's to those neighborhoods or away from those neighborhoods. So I think it's kind of a both and thing when we're talking about desegregation. I think it's, yeah, I don't think I have a different way of saying that.
I like it. Is that in, I mean, I know it's example. Does this subcommittee have that in writing? I mean, that would be nice to have available.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. So basically our vision for desegregation in Tucson.
Yes. Yeah. That sounds good to me.
Okay. So I would say one is, let's say identify and dismantle barriers that perpetuate segregation. And then I think the other piece of the puzzle that I mentioned is providing, making sure that all neighborhoods are adequately resourced, something like that, for people who want to live there.
Yeah, because there are some neighborhoods that, they just don't seem to get the attention that they're given is not as much as others.
Right. And maybe I think the way I said it before, and I think maybe is a little bit, I like a little bit better, is making sure that historically under-resourced neighborhoods are adequately resourced.
Yeah, I like that. I forget you were talking about somebody who describes it as, sorry, I'm just trying to look back at the captioning, but the idea of breaking up neighborhoods of color. And it's like, well, you can do that and people can still be, like you said, under-resourced and have all of the same issues, just in a different neighborhood.
Right.
Can we steal from another initiative that's going on? I'm thinking about the Equitable Economic Mobility Initiative. Can we steal mobility, use some of that language?
Yeah. I think that's when I talk about identifying and dismantling barriers that perpetuate segregation, I think the next sentence is, or the other way to say that is, creating a city where people have mobility to go where they need to go. Or I'm not articulating it very well, but it's about social mobility and the ability for people to go where they need to go in order to access the resources they want to access. Because I think, Mike, for me, the problem, the idea, the thing that is wrong with segregation is it has prevented people's mobility, whatever that may be. I mean, physical mobility to more metaphysical mobility as well.
Yeah, I like that. Go ahead and sketch that out. Where you were going with it sounds good. So yeah.
Improve both physical and metaphysical mobility of residents of Tucson.
Yeah, I'm just looking at I'm thinking about faces when you use the word metaphysical. They're going to go, what?
I know.
That's not big dreams.
Yeah.
I think it's good to dream big.
Yeah. Free the bodies and minds of residents of Tucson.
I say we ask for everything and take what we can get.
That's right. Totally. Okay, so what I have jotted down is our vision for desegregation in Tucson is identifying and dismantling barriers that perpetuate segregation, and resources for neighborhoods that have been historically under-resourced, and then improve mobility for Tucsonans. And I didn't elaborate on that, but just as kind of a placeholder. I think the other thing that kind of goes along with this that we haven't identified explicitly, but I think it goes to the barriers that perpetuate segregation, is gentrification and displacement, which is one of the big things that this commission is supposed to deal with that we really have not dealt with at all, right? I feel like if the barriers that we're talking about didn't still exist, gentrification and displacement wouldn't really happen, right? I mean, there's something that happens when development happens that pushes people out because there are barriers for people to stay where they were living. So, those barriers are still, I think, part of the larger system, that created the segregation in the first place and that we have allowed to carry forward, So I don't know if we need to name gentrification and displacement explicitly, but I think that that's kind of a piece of the puzzle, right? It's like, yeah, and I think that's the problem too, right? It's like you start to resource communities, quote unquote, and that also then starts this cycle of gentrification and displacement, right? So there's this there's a barrier there. So how do you provide resources and how do you do community development in a way that's not, ultimately leading to gentrification and displacement? And I don't know that Tucson can figure that out on its own. I think everywhere in this country is trying to figure that out, but I guess I'm just saying that because I don't want us to forget the gentrification and displacement piece. So that takes us to agenda item number 5, discussing issues related to gentrification and displacement. We're just like organically flowing through this agenda, which is great. But I do want to go back to, before it does get too late, thinking about our end goal for our meeting and potentially what we're taking back to the full commission. Again, centering on the equity study. And I guess where I'm landing based on what we're talking about, I think, taking that to the full commission and saying that the first thing that we want to do related to the equity study is land on or come up with a shared vision of housing equity in Tucson and what a framework would look like to get there.
I like that.
Lori, Vicky, any thoughts?
I'm good with that. I'm really just, in order to continue being engaged, need need to have some movement. So I think I agree with that. That's the direction I'd like to move in.
The other thing I think is important, facilitated, which I was okay with, but think could have been done better, was when we first started, we had the facilitator help us kind of get our thoughts together and get on the same page. I think that could be useful again, because I think it's going to be hard for us within the context of the meetings and the framework of our meetings to really do that together. So I don't know if maybe we can also propose having a facilitator help us get through that work together.
I think that's an excellent idea. I forgot about that, but a facilitator will definitely move the conversation forward.
Yeah, I mean, it's so strange. It's like you get a bunch of smart people together who know this stuff without a facilitator. It can just still be really hard to get anywhere. And then you get a good facilitator, and then it's like the dam breaks, I guess. Go ahead, Neto.
Thank you, Jay. Along those lines, Jay and commissioners, reminder that new commissioners are coming. Will be joining one today, and then Ray will come in at the next meeting. And there is an item on the council agenda for next week that Kenny Wong from the U of A be appointed to the commission. So you may be in a good time to engage in a facilitator to come back, because you have new voices.
Oh yeah, that's a good point. I didn't think about that.
Hey, in regards to facilitators, I can't remember the person that we had involved before, but I just want to throw a name out there, only because I keep having interactions with her, and I like her, and I think she might be good to tap into. Maybe she's got something to contribute, maybe not. Rebecca Roop, because she deals with neighborhoods.
Yeah.
And I was just wondering if bringing her into a conversation about desegregation might give us something. Yeah,
she's certainly somebody we can put on the list. Although I don't know, I know Rebecca as well, and have a tremendous amount of respect for her knowledge and insight into planning and all the things we're talking about. But I don't know if she's got like facilitation skills like we're talking about, but it's certainly somebody to consider, because I feel like facilitation, if you're doing it, it's almost one of like the main things you do as a profession, because it's such a skill. But let's put Rebecca on the list of potential people who can help us through this. And I don't remember the name of the facilitator that we had the first time either. Mike, do you, Neto, do you remember her name?
That was before I joined. I don't recall.
Yeah.
No.
I'm sure somebody will remember. It's not that important. Let's see. Okay, you guys. I feel like we've kind of landed on something to at least take back to the full commission, that we want to center the conversation going forward on the equity study. And the first thing we want to come out of that is coming up with our shared vision for housing equity in Tucson and a framework to achieve that potentially, and that we would like to request that be a facilitated conversation or whatever we want to call it. Is that good for today? Because I know that we've got a lot of meetings still left to go later this afternoon, so I don't know if we can maybe wrap up and hang our hats on that today, or what do you guys think? Where do we go from here for this?
I don't have a copy of the agenda, so is that the last? Is that the last item?
Let's see. We are at number 5, gentrification and displacement. Number 6 is the HAST implementation updates and discussion, and then the call to the audience is number 7. 8 is next steps, and 9 is adjournment. So I don't know, Neto, do you have any HAST implementation updates? I know Allison usually does that.
Just a brief item.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go ahead and move on to because we can wrap up our conversation in number 8, next steps, I think. Yeah, go ahead, Neto. Number 6, the HAST implementation updates and discussion.
Thank you, Jay. So yes, Allison's not with us. She's getting ready for a big HUD visit next week. She asked that I just pass along the information regarding the source of income protection ordinance on the enforcement side of it. And I think Jay can help me out a little bit here. Southwest Fair Housing Council has applied or did receive some funding for its enforcement that it will be doing to support SOI, and that funding is coming through the key chip funding sources here at HCD. Did I get that right, Jay?
Yes, I don't know that that's been formally announced, but I think the cat is significantly out of the bag at this point. So
meow, meow, meow. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, but she did ask me to mention it. Yes.
Yeah. No, that's great. Yeah. I think we're going to get about $90,000 to help with enforcement, and a big piece of the puzzle will also be education and outreach involving a decent amount of media to, yeah, like you said, help bolster the city's SOI business. So yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else, Neto? Is that it for?
That was it, Jay.
Cool. Thank you. I'm going to move on to number 7, call to the audience. This is a time when any member of the public may address the Commission on Equitable Housing and Development's Housing Desegregation Subcommittee. Due to time constraints, the total time allocated for this is 15 minutes. Individuals have 3 minutes. And with that, would anybody from the public like to speak? Mike, I guess that's you. Do you have anything that you would like to add?
Yeah, I do. Actually, I was going to jump in because I just wanted to, and this actually still relates to the subcommittee. So when I signed up with the Zoom link and stuff, I got the email. I'm looking at it. I've got it on one screen here. It says Housing Desegregation Subcommittee meetings. It runs through December, but from May 4, it jumps to June 22nd. And I'm bringing it up because I made a mistake. I did have today's agenda open in a tab from the CEHD website. And as we get to item 8, where it says next meeting, May 25th, I guess I'm pointing this out more for Neto than anybody else. So in the agenda, it says May 25th, but Neto, Zoom, when I signed up and stuff and is sending, what the dates are going to be, May 25th is not in the emails I'm getting from Zoom.
Okay, thanks for that. I'll look at that.
Okay, and that's it. Thank you for the time.
I was muted. Cool. Thanks, Mike. Appreciate that. Okay. Let's move on to number 8, next steps. Just so we can kind of wrap this up in a bow for what we want to say to the full commission. Are we all clear basically about kind of what we're going to recommend to the full commission today? Again, what I have heard is we really want to center our work going forward on the equity study. And from that, we really think it's critical and are asking the commission to develop a shared vision for housing equity in Tucson, and including a framework for how to get there. Does that accurately reflect kind of where we got to today? Is there anything I'm missing? Is there anything that needs to be added? Okay, well, we'll try again, taking something to the full commission, see how that goes. Let's see, our next meeting, it says on here is May 25th. I'm not sure if that's accurate, but I'm sure we'll get the updates and emails regardless. And we are meeting a little bit late. Usually we meet a week or 2 before the full commission meeting, but obviously had to push that back. So May 25th seems like it would be, yeah, go ahead.
And no, I'll check on the webinar schedule. I am looking at it. It does not list May 25th, but that is the correct date.
Okay.
Thank you, Mike.
Okay. So it sounds like we're kind of in agreement with what we're taking back to the full commission as our request. And then so this is one thing actually that I would like to myself do a little bit better with, and it's items for future meetings. I feel like I get a little bit blindsided by the request for a meeting agenda items, not for anybody's fault, but just because I usually have a lot going on. But I want to make sure that I am connecting with y'all about the agenda for our subcommittee meetings. I have not done a good job of that. So I don't know what the best way to do that is. Maybe I just need to be better about when I get the request from HCD staff that I'm connecting with y'all. I don't know. Do y'all have any thoughts about how we're doing our future meetings and the agendas that we're working with?
No, my thoughts were like, if we're having monthly subcommittee meetings, how about 2 weeks before the meeting date, just an email to, at minimum, commission members. That would be you. Just a reminder, and then a request for agenda items. How's that sound?
That makes perfect sense. I think that's a great idea. So if the next meeting, if the next subcommittee meeting is the 25th of May, that would mean 2 weeks would be May 11th. So I can certainly send something out or requesting stuff. Go ahead, Vicki.
Well, I was just going to say, I think, and maybe just including, because you probably already know some agenda items because they tend to be the same each time. So maybe just including those, you know, as a draft, and then people can add or suggest changes. And I know we should be doing the agenda together. It shouldn't be all of your responsibility, but then, you know, if we don't respond and you have something, then that's our fault for not speaking up.
Sure. That makes sense. And I'll do this too. I will. So I made myself a reminder to email HGS members or agenda items. So I'll email y'all on the 11th of May, and then I will also just do it again on the 18th. Okay. All right. I will. I'll email y'all in twice before the next meeting just to see if we have any agenda items. And usually, if I'm more on top of things, Vicki, generally what I'll do is I'll just go to the commission website and like look at the old agenda because it's always there. But I can definitely you know, put something together as well. So.
Oh, well, no, good point. So when we get that email, we should look at the old agenda and provide feedback if we have any.
Yeah. But yeah, we can work together to make that happen. Let's see, what else are we, are there any items for future meetings now that we have? We good for now? Any other things, y'all, that we need to talk about under number 8, next steps, before we adjourn? Okay. Well, I do really appreciate y'all engaging in these conversations. I find them to be very fruitful, and like I said, I really want to try and, you know, do what we can to move the ball forward, even if it's a little slower and more frustrating than we would all like for it to be. But, you know, it is what it is. So I just want to thank you all for showing up and really being very reliable for these subcommittee meetings, because I know that, like somebody mentioned, I think some of the other subcommittees have struggled a little bit. So much appreciation there. And with that, I will move on to item number 9, adjournment. So thanks again, everybody. And I will see you guys on Zoom in about 45 minutes.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, y'all.
Time for coffee. Thank you.